also need to do the source parchment for PM2.5 and to identify which one. Actually, we joined when China joined the WTO. It's the year of the 2001. So it is also the beginning of the industrialization and urbanization of this country. You can see the increase, the red line increase of the PM2.5 sharply in the first 7 years. So we come to the very high concentration, and then we take some measures, but we just keep the concentration of PM2.5 in a very high level. It's stable, but very high level. So it's in the year of the 2013. This is a milestone for the air pollution control in China. So we have a new version, brand new version of the National Action Plan. It's the so-called Air Pollution Control Action Plan of China. And in the past 10 years, we renew it in three versions. So you can see all of the primary pollutants, NOx, SO2, VOC, and PM2.5 all get its peaks in the past 10 years. And now, the energy using, the GDP value is still increasing, but thank God we control the PM2.5. PM2.5 concentration decreased in the past 10 years. So the example of Beijing, also praised by the UN, that this is a very good example of the science-based solutions. So next one, please. 10 years before, this is what we faced. Just like the pollutions we are facing today in South Asia. So North China Plain used to be the most polluted area in the world. And especially in the year of 2013, there is a series of heavy pollution episodes happened. So the PM2.5 hourly average value hit the ceiling, The concentration got 800 microgram per cubic meter. So we have a lot of very heavy pressures on the shoulder of the government. So next one, please. But there's a huge gap, a huge difference between China and the EU and the United States, So in EU and United States, they have a very good plan. They have a plan from the target to the action, step by step. But in China, it's different. We just have a very limited window to control the pollution. So we cannot, when everything gets ready. So we need to do the source parchment, make the source emission inventory, and also draw the action plans and draw the roadmaps for the nationwide and the provinces and cities at the same time. So this is totally different action plan. Next one, please. In the past 10 years, based on this action plan, national action plan, we have did some works for the major structural adjustment. For example, the energy using, the industrial, the traffic, and also we take some measures for the power plants, coal burning power plants. We publish some very strict standards, maybe the most strict standards in the world. There is a so-called ultra low emission. And also for the traffics, for the open burning, for the control of the agricultural straws, agricultural waste, and also the VOC controls. So this is every step. This means the central government and the local governments need to pay a lot of money. So next one. So what should we do before we take these actions? The first one is the key regions. The North China Plain is used to be the most polluted in the area in the world. And you can tell the difference for the PM2.5 in the Yangtze River Delta and Pearl River Delta in South China. So there is a huge gap. So firstly, we focus on the North China Plain, the Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei province, the so-called BTH region. So this is the key regions in China for PM2.5 control, for the smog control. Next one. And secondly is the key seasons. We also have pollution seasons, the so-called smog season. the winter and autumn. Because in the winter in North China, we have to burn the coals for heating. There is the very long period, about 5 months period of heating season. So there used to be 40 million families use the coals for heating.
Stricter vehicular checks.
So each of these, and there are many more, are examples whether
to replace all the renew the version of the oils, the gasolines, the diesels. You can tell the colors from different versions. Yeah. And a lot of EVs, new EVs, was promoted to be used in the short distance transportation. Yeah. Next one, please. For the dust, just in the morning, experts present that the dust emission is a very important source of Pakistan. So it's also happening in China. In the past 10 years, it's just the most important period of the urbanization in our country. So a lot of construction fields, a lot of road dust. So we make full use of the satellites. So these satellites can help us to address every single one, to study them and to adjust them if they have try their best to control the dust. And also we develop some local sensors
and fix this sensor on the top of the taxis. And with the help of these taxis, and they can draft the dust map of the city, of the whole city. So the mayors and the governors can use their the dust cannons to focus on the red part, the most polluted road. So it can save a lot of money. So next one. So behind this is the science. We are also a developing country. We have a limit of the money,
a lot of the fundings. Just now, some the bankers, they are very focused on the financial support. We also worry about that. But our scientists, this is the rules we played. So in the past 10 years, we have a joint research center. It's located, headquarters located in our campus in Greece. So there is a very big group of scientists. There is more than 2,000 people, scientists here behind this. And all the scientists is join this NAPC, the Joint Research Center, to help the policymakers to make the right decision. Next one, please. So this is the Joint Research Center played, and they will help the policymakers, not only the Ministry of Ecology and Environmental Protection, but also the agriculture management, steel refinery, traffic, and other ministries. And also they will serve for the governors and mayors for the provinces and cities. And there is a so-called 2+26 cities in North China. The first two is Beijing and Tianjin. Because there are a lot of scientists, we divide this into 28 groups. And every single group will go to one city to stay there in the heating season, in the polluted season, to help the mayors and the governors to make the decision. So they will tell what is the most pollutant, when the heavy pollution episode will be happening, and where the sources, where the emission is, and who will be the most responsible for the sources and how to solve it. Next one. So this is what we've done in the past 10 years with the help of the scientists, the monitoring station, monitoring networks. We use the satellites, we use the super stations to do the real-time source apportionment. We also renew the emission inventories every month. So all these fundamental research works can be used to make the decisions. Next one. And we also help the central government to establish a heavy pollution emergency response system. That means before the coming of the pollution episode, our forecasting system will tell the government and where the sources come from. So we'll take some emergency actions, of course, to reduce some manufacturing capacities for certain area. So based on the A, B, C, D categories. So the A level, when there is a heavy pollution episode happen, the A-level factories still can produce as before. Also, next one. So one of the most important part is one city, one policy. There is also a huge imbalance between cities and cities. We only have one Beijing. Beijing is the capital city. They have the very unique resources. The local governments have money, but not all the cities have the similar capacity. So that's why
we need to do the one city, one policy. We have to do the source apportionment to everyone and help the mayors to draft their own roadways. Next one. So with the help of the regional air pollution control actions and also the one city, one policy, so you can see the difference in the past 10 years. The PM2.5 decreased by 64%, but without effect of the increase of the GDP.
Next, please. This is, you can tell the difference. We just use 7 years. Beijing, Beijing in the year of 2013, the PM2.5 is 89, and now is 30. Now it's lower than 30. Yeah, next one, please. We also have a lot of international cooperations, especially in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And now the air pollution is in South Asia is the most polluted area for PM2.5, and also in Southeast Asia there is a sharp increase of PM2.5. So we also have a cooperation with ECMOD and Pakistan. Next one. And last year, the chief minister also visited the MEE, the Minister of Ecology and Environment Protection, meet our minister, and they have agreements, and we will have a joint team to study the source and to help the Punjab to establish the observation system. So I'm very lucky and very honored to be the representative and the chief scientist of the Chinese part. And I deeply hope that in the next few years we can work together and also do something for the good of the improvement of the air quality in Punjab, in Lahore. I thank you. I also believe that the PM2.5 is solvable. It can be solved. And also can be solved in a proper way, in a better way, without the effect of our development. And I think this will be the so-called high-quality development, and this will be a very important part of our brotherhood between these two countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gao. I think the message is very clear. Really, the story of China is not only a story of the economic and development miracle, but it's also a story of how to reverse pollution. And I think that is a fantastic example that Lahore and many other parts can learn. And I really like this one policy, one city, one policy approach. Maybe the decentralization is not so bad in dealing with climate issue, that each city can have its own specific plans based on the resources they have. I remember when the Beijing Olympics were coming, how people were worried about the environment and whether Beijing was the right place to have an Olympic Games because of the air pollution issue. And now I think Beijing is an example to many parts of the world on what can be done with the right policies and the right focus for that transformation. So congratulations, and thank you for offering support to colleagues here in Pakistan. Thank you very much. So I will now call on our second transboundary expert, the Member of Parliament from Sri Lanka, His Excellency Harshana. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Dawn Media and the other partners of this important session for bringing us together to address a problem that crosses borders as easily as the wind. I come before you as a parliamentarian from Sri Lanka, a country with a deep maritime traditions and a people who depend on the sea and the land for their daily bread. I do not speak as a technical expert. I speak as a representative of the families who are vast, increasingly worried. Why does our air sometimes look like smoke? Why do children wake up with wheezing chests? Why do our beaches carry debris of other people's waste? These are not abstract questions, they are urgent human questions. Experts point to PM2.5, fine particulate matter, as one of the most harmful pollutants because of how it penetrates lungs and the bloodstream, impacting children, the elderly, and those with chronic illnesses. In Sri Lanka, we have witnessed spikes of poor air quality, often linked to both local sources and long-range transport from neighboring regions. And we have seen maritime litter accumulate on our shores in patterns that point to transboundary flows. Let me be frank about our vulnerabilities. As an island nation, I Our geographic position gives us limited control over airborne and ocean-borne pollutants that originate beyond our territorial waters. Seasonal wind patterns can and do carry emissions from distant sources, deposit them on our island. At the same time, internal challenges remain. Some industrial sites and congested urban corridors generate local pollution, and there are important gaps in vehicle standards and enforcement. In fact, independent oversight has found that a very high proportion of vehicles on our roads do not meet adequate smoke emission standards, a problem that aggravates urban exposure to harmful pollutants.
The human consequences of inactions are grave. Poor air quality shortens life expectancy, increases hospital admissions for respiratory and cardiovascular disease, undermines children's lung development and school attendance, and reduces worker productivity. Marine pollution damages, especially in Sri Lanka, the fisheries, the tourism, and the food security of coastal communities. These are not issues confined to an environmental brief. They are public health, economic, and social justice emergencies. So what do we do as a region? Permit me to outline a pragmatic, three-pronged approach that is diplomatic, actionable, and suited to governments, civil societies, and international partners alike. Number one, create a regional monitoring and data sharing network. We must establish an interoperable network of air and marine monitoring stations with transparent real-time data accessible to governments, scientists, and the public. Shared data builds trust, enables coordinated early warnings, and allows us to identify sources, signatures that mitigation is targeted and effective. This does not have to be confined to expensive technology. We can begin with harmonized protocols, pool labs, and shared modeling efforts. Number two, coordinated policy and enforcement across borders. Air and sea pollution, by definition, transboundary. National policies that reduce emissions at source, cleaner fuels, stricter vehicle and industrial standards, improve waste management, and sustainable agricultural practices are essential. But when one country's emissions affect another air or beaches, bilateral and multilateral mechanisms are needed to align standards, incentivize compliance, and provide channels of technical assistance and dispute resolution. Number three, mobilize finance, technology, and capacity through international partnership. Many states in our region lack fiscal space to modernize fleets or scale up waste management. We should collectively engage multilateral development banks, climate funds, and UN agencies to target finance and technology transfer for clean air and maritime protection programs, especially those that directly benefit vulnerable communities. I want to underline 2 points of political importance. First, diplomacy matters. Environmental diplomacy is not a second-order concern. It is central to regional stability and shared prosperity. Let us use SAARC, IORA, Bay of Bengal initiatives, bilateral channels, and global forums to build an architecture for cooperation on air and marine quality. Second, justice matters. Small island and coastal communities should not be the matters. Small island and coastal communities should not be the unwilling recipients of other states' pollution. Where possible, we should negotiate and responsibility sharing mechanisms, including technical support, funding or mitigation, and if necessary, remediation assistance. Here I would like to commend Pakistan for taking decisive steps to place clean air on the national agenda for convening forums such as this one that foster regional dialogue. The leadership shown here in policy, public engagement, and industrial innovation set an example and open space for cooperation action across South Asia. Sri Lanka extends its solidarity with Pakistan's effort and stands ready to work in partnership. We also must not forget the role of communities and civil societies. Local fishermen, community organizations, youth groups cleaning beaches, doctors tracking asthma admissions, they hold vital evidence and are strengthened public information systems so citizens can make safer daily choices when pollution episodes occur, and evolve communities in monitoring and local mitigation. Finally, allow me to offer a concrete
offer from Sri Lanka. We propose the establishment of a small regional task force, officials, scientists, and civil society representatives to draft a short action-oriented memorandum of understanding within the next year or so that sets out shared monitoring protocols, emergency notification procedures, and a plan for a joint capacity building. This task force would report back to the bureaucracy ministers and invite multilateral partners to support implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, pollution that begins across borders can end lives here at home. The air we breathe and the seas that sustain our livelihoods are common goods. Protecting them demands compassion, solidarity, and a practical cooperation. Let us seize this moment not for rhetoric, but for real, measurable action for the health of our children, for the resilience of our economies, for the dignity of our coastal communities. Sri Lanka stands with Pakistan and with all other nations of the Indian Ocean and the South Asia in this work. Let us go forward. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament from Sri Lanka. You said you are not an expert, but you spoke as one. And I think your proposals for concrete action, what it can be done at the regional level, is maybe something that our colleagues on the Pakistani side can really deliberate and take forward. But thank you also for sharing the challenges of island nations face when it comes to this issue. And what you put forward, I think, is something that should definitely be considered. I will now call on Aban, our Senior Regional Advisor on Climate and Environment. Aban, she's Pakistani, but she also very much a UN person. Over to you, Aban.
Thank you very much. And I'll start by saying thank you to Dawn, all your representatives here in the room. I must admit that more than a year ago, when Dawn first started the discussions with some of the representatives of the UN, the question was asked, why is Dawn interested in actually doing something on climate change? And, you know, maybe it's all part of the spreading the message, the news. Well, let me tell you that, you know, since those early discussions and where we stand today, there are 2 or 3 things that have emerged from having a media house with the capacity and the power of Dawn, which seem to be a way of perhaps other speakers have said this as well, other media companies thinking seriously about how they apply themselves to campaigns which are in the public interest, which are in the interest of a country and its future. The messaging that Dawn has brought forth, both in terms of technical understanding of the issues and the importance of the issue, the convening power, and the influencing has been really quite remarkable. But most importantly has been the consistency of the message and a commitment where, again, we've heard earlier, you know, is this a one-off, just a sort of PR exercise, and then you move on to the new fashion of the next year? It hasn't been. And between the conference that was held earlier in February this year and the one that's going to be held next year, there's been a consistent campaign on issues to do with climate, but under climate, air pollution. I know they're discussing population, and one that we hope we'll be engaged with very closely with them on water. But back to, so thank you again. But back to the presentation I've been asked to speak on today about transboundary. When we talk about transboundary, and I want you to look at the region I'm going to talk about just now. Basically, this is South Asia. South Asia at night, you can see how well it shows where the great population centers are, and also where the major ecosystems are of South Asia, along which the cities grow, because the lights come mainly from the cities. And when you talk about a region, I go back to something that somebody asked me many years ago when I was first made a regional director. How do you define a region? Is it the sum of its countries, or is it more? And really, if you want to do something on the regional basis, the answer should be it's more. You respect, of course, the boundaries of the nation state and the political boundaries that you have in any region. But then you look and say, how, if you work from my perspective, my business, which is environment, climate, nature, how does it become more than just the political boundaries of the nation state? And that actually requires a rationale, what you base the more on. That's the next point that I want to bring in, which is what we really talk about when we talk about regionalization and transboundary issues, and then the resource issues that we're going to be dealing with as we deal with the future of South Asia. But first, if we can go on to the country we're in and the subject of this conference. You've heard some of these statistics, but they are grim. 99% of our population breathes polluted air. It causes, you've heard the figure, almost over 100,000 deaths per year, unnecessarily. The top cities of Lahore, Faisalabad, Karachi, and Peshawar are among the top most polluted cities globally. This is not just Asia, this is globally. That's pretty grim. And finally, you've seen the economic loss, 6% of GDP. And we're looking at just one aspect of pollution, the air. We haven't even got to water, the soil, and other aspects of pollution that also plague our country. So back to the idea of getting a region in perspective. Any region would be defined by the geography in which it is located. And in South Asia, we look at the region from the perspective of climate as the big ecosystems that define this region. So we look at the mountain systems, the Hindu Kush, the Himalaya, the Karakoram, the plains and the urban corridors, the Indo-Gangetic Plain, and we look at the coasts, and of course Sri Lanka is part of that. The deltate zones, the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal. And then if you start looking at what air pollution is doing in those areas, in the mountains, one of the greatest impacts is black carbon. You've heard about black carbon, and this is really accelerating the melting of our glaciers. People speak of black carbon, but where is its biggest impact? It's glacial melt. And that means that, you know, it has dire consequences, and much of what you talk about when you talk about floods, temperature has a role, monsoons have a role, but so too does black carbon. And then, of course, there's the use of diesel, biomass burning, household fuels, and the cross-border flows that one is talking about, where the winds blow, whether they blow from east to west, north to south. This is all affected by our mountain ranges. Then there are the plains and the urban corridors, the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Again, almost the most polluted airshed globally. Persistent winter fog all over, not just across our borders, but all over. And it often exceeds 100 milligrams per million. Key drivers, transport, industry, open burning, agriculture, and it's right across. The wind makes it worse or better, depending on, you know, how the wind flows, but it's right across. And of course, it's the dense population and the weak dispersion of the wind in winter, of the fog in winter, which makes this a core transboundary pollution zone in South Asia. And then the coasts. Air quality is influenced greatly by industrial clusters, by port emissions, by shipping lanes, particularly around Karachi, Mumbai, Chennai, Dhaka, and Madras. The sea salt aerosol mix with industrial pollutants again form secondary particulates in the air. And then the buffers of our coasts, the mangrove ecosystem, which for centuries protected us against so much of, storms, surges, etc., has been so degraded that that too contributes to the pollution and the lack of storage, because the mangrove tree is actually one of the best plant carbon capture that nature provides. So you cut them down, you release more carbon, you get more air pollution. So let's have a look again at these ecosystems with satellite images. So that's your Hindu Kush Himalaya, and look please at the red zones. And you can see now, left to east, you've got Pakistan, then you've got Nepal, then you've got Bangladesh. And if you look again at the various points, you can see where the pollution is and the red zones. And this is the mountain systems. And it's not surprising, really, is it, that we're suffering from floods and even more glacial melt, because all this contributes to climate change and higher temperatures. The next one. Here are your mountains and glaciers, your northern glaciers losing up to 1 meter of ice thickness annually. 1 meter is a lot of ice to lose, and it doesn't freeze back in spring as it used to. Then you've got your black carbon depositions. You've got all kinds of things that are trying to restore and bring back alternatives like solar, and there are a whole range of adaptation measures, but it's not enough. It's not enough to counter the impact of pollution on climate change and air quality, and you see it in all the red unhealthy zones in that particular area of the mountains and the glaciers. Move on. Next. Then the urban cities and the urban plains, the cities and the smogs, which are mostly all in that upper northern area of South Asia. Again, look at the figures that are coming in, and these are the most recent figures. Lahore, Delhi, Dhaka, Kathmandu. And the causes, you can see transport, brick kilns, vehicular, but all the same kind of sources of pollution in all the cities. And we've got the mitigation measures. Again, the question is execution, effectiveness. Move on. Okay, now we're looking at the plains. This is probably, as I said, one of the most polluted parts in the world in terms of air quality. The Indus-Ganges plain. And again, you can see all the red spots. It goes, and you can see how bad, in fact, it is even in northern Bangladesh. It's not just our part of the world that is a region that is quite so badly impacted. We move on. Okay, this comes actually from this month, a month ago. If you look here and you start looking at, this is the most air quality index, the most polluted cities in the world. Look at how many are in our region. One, Kolkata, Karachi, Dhaka, and if you want to take Jakarta, Lahore. 2 of which are in Pakistan, most polluted in the world in terms of air quality. I mean, it's really quite grim. We move on. That's the November 2024 figures by NASA on smog. As you can see, again, that mountain area, which is probably one of our most important buffers in terms of climate resilience, is being severely affected by air pollution. We move on. The coastal belt. This is an area that the sea absorbs a great deal, but it has a limited capacity. the marine environment. And again, the more we pollute in terms of the ports, the ship operations, the emission targets, the more we have to restore and bring back to some level of health in the marine environment. So we have projects, I mean, UNEP, FAO, a number of other UN agencies, the governments themselves. There are a number of adaptation measures where we're looking at integrating coastal air quality management with blue carbon restoration, getting the ocean to act as it should, as a sort of sink. But as I said, not enough for the scale of the problem. You move on. Again, the coastlines. And here also you have Sri Lanka represented together with the others. But actually, Sri Lanka is not looking bad at all relative to the others. So you're doing a good job. Move on. So the transboundary challenges that we're talking about. The smog, there's a lot of local emission and regional transport, and there's the cross-border smoke, which goes back and forth. But the local sources dominate the entire year. We can't just blame the wind that comes from west, north, east. It is our own transmissions and our own emissions. And we heard the representatives of the Punjab government saying how much they'd done to improve it, which acknowledges that so much of the sources are localized, and we must deal with the problems in our own backyard. Having said that, we acknowledge that the Indo-Gangetic Plain acts as one airshed, and it requires a coordinated regional response. Reference was made earlier to that as well. The UN can help facilitate regional dialogues. They can have plans and treaties through the global conventions on residue management, and there are a whole range of data sources that can be shared in terms of the response. Can you move on? So the UN takes its integrated approach in the region, but specifically in Pakistan. We have the Living Indus program that a lot of you know about. We have a national adaptation plan. We have a national disaster risk reduction strategy, and everywhere one fits in with whatever the climate NDC or the climate plans, the climate responses that the government develops through the Ministry of Climate Change. And I'd like to focus right now on the National Adaptation Plan, which Pakistan has in operation, in execution right now, and the sorts of things that would be impacting favorably on the kinds of problems we're looking at. There's a hydromet and agromet information system being developed with all the key institutions in Pakistan that are working on that. There's a cost-benefit appraisal and investment prioritization for adaptation options, particularly in the provinces, drawing on a lot of the Living Indus data, which we already have. And in the provinces, again, we've got in Punjab, clean transport and urban air quality work, and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, forest stabilization, essentially trying to do a lot of restoration work in the floodplains, in the lakes, and in the forests, and on the watersheds to try and ensure that you get much more carbon capture. Can we move on? In Sindh, there's a lot of work going along the coast, both in terms of mangroves and blue carbon, restoration. Balochistan, there's clean energy access, dryland resilience, and in Gilgit-Baltistan and AJK, a lot of focus on the cryosphere, which is of course the one that is affected most by black carbon, through clean stoves and micro hydropower. And then of course there are all the cross-cutting measures of the nature-based solutions, solid waste reduction, which apply to our rivers, to our agricultural practices, and a whole range of other natural ecosystems that can be managed and restored, a great deal which would assist with everything, including air quality. So the organizations that work most actively on environmental work in the UN, there's UNEP, the organization I work for, the WHO, the UN Habitat, FAO, and UNDP. All of them have major programs in the country, all of them addressing through whatever the nature of the program, air pollution, air quality gets addressed as well. Right? I think that's it. Is that the last one? Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aban, and thank you for really highlighting the situation in the region. I know you said Sri Lanka was doing a bit better, but I think a bit better from a very disastrous situation maybe is not good enough for even Sri Lanka. Just quickly, just to say that we have Nafisa to come next. After that, we'll show 5 minutes videos, and then I think our session will be wrapping up. But first, before I invite Nafisa, allow me to introduce her again. She's a director, Climate Change Actions and Sustainability, based here in Lahore for WWF. Over to you, Nafisa. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening now, because it's 5:30 already. So can I have the next slide, please, so that we jump into the subject first. So I'm sure everybody has heard a lot since morning about what air pollution is, what the government is doing, what the other countries are doing. But I think it was very important to, I was discussing with my colleague that do I have to build a context? Yes, we do. We always have to have a foundation, although my colleagues who have spoken before me since morning, they have tried their best to sort of cover the major issues, but I still felt, there are certain stats which were very close to me, and I felt that they were important to let them be on the presentation. So the first figure that I want you to sort of look at is about 8.5 million deaths annually, and this is a report by World Bank, and this is a staggering figure. And it is human lives that we're talking about. Indeed, it is a health emergency. And then when we talk about air pollution and talk about health, it is about children, it is about adults, it's about the elderly. Right now, we are entering into the smog season, which is also known as the 5th season in Lahore specifically, and which is as deadly as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes each day. One breath that we take here right now. The AQI levels last year, I was just looking at the different cities and the stats yesterday night, and I came across Multan. The AQI levels went higher than 800, which is huge. And imagine that once you enter the city of Multan, there's a cloud which you can see, which is just dust and yellow. I also happened to be in Bangladesh, Dhaka. And when I was going through the, the trans-boundary and was exploring the regional issues and the challenges that we countries in the South Asia are facing in terms of air pollution, I actually was like, Bangladesh, the Dhaka city, Karachi, Delhi, and Lahore aren't any different. We're all facing the same challenges, extreme weather conditions, a lot of climate impacts, and unfortunately, Pakistan is in the top 5 most vulnerable countries. So is India, so is Bangladesh. Didn't you see the floods, right? They just passed by, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to overcome the impacts of the floods. We couldn't even build back better after the 2022 devastation caused by the floods. So, as I stand here, we talk about population growth, and as the population is growing, we are going to need more energy, which is again dependency on fossil fuels. And can you imagine what are the damages that fossil fuels are going to cause and contribute
to the air emissions? They are huge. And as you can see on the screen, there are about $2.9 trillion that we will be, suffering globally. Next, please. Yeah, so I think we all know that we're sitting in a geographic zone which is very, very risky in terms of development, in terms of economic growth, in terms of climatic impacts. So having said that, we unfortunately, 50% of our air pollution comes from transboundary. That's what we want to envision, mostly. But yes, later down the presentation, I will take you to the drivers, which actually are the key variables in driving this transboundary air pollution. Because that is also, we can't really blame everybody else. Right now, I don't want to sort of sound pessimistic. I want to be more optimistic and look at solution-oriented approach rather than just highlighting the problem, because I think since morning we've highlighted the problem enough. But I think the death toll is important. It actually is an alarm for all the regions. Not only, you know, the South Asian belt, but also the Southeast Asian belt, because that is also a booming industrial zone. And it's not only Pakistan, we are, you know, contributing to less than 1% to the global greenhouse gas emissions.
But at the same time, we have to suffer the most. And I'm not talking only on the behalf of Pakistan, I'm talking on the behalf of the South Asian countries. Next, please. So here, this chart was really exciting and, you know, disturbing, because it states that, for people who can't turn around, because of course I have a neck ache now looking at the back, so I will read it to you guys. So India lost about 2.1 million people in 2021. Bangladesh, Pakistan, 200,000+ people lost their lives. And the people who were suffering from different respiratory diseases, eye infections. I was just telling my colleague that, you know, I've started having eye irritation lately. Why am I having that? I'm sure a lot of people out of, you know, the crowd that is sitting ahead, you know, in front of me, they might be suffering with the morning allergy that we call. It's all because of the dust. And unfortunately, we are living in one of the most polluted city at the moment, where the life expectancy has been reduced by 7 years. That is not a small number. I mean, we are at the brink of, you know, all the negativity in terms, negative health impacts that we can face. Next, please. Okay, so these are just the drivers. We all know that there are plenty of sources and causes of air pollution. But these are not only for Pakistan and from Pakistan. I would like to sort of, you know, stress upon the same fact that, you know, when we talk about vehicular emission, when we talk about, you know, the fuel usage, unfortunately in South Asian countries, the fuel quality is pathetic. That means that the emissions that we are throwing out by burning those fuels, majority of which is coal, heavy furnace oil, and then natural gas. Although that, you know, we are also a big advocate of just energy transition, moving on to renewable energies, and we are, you know, moving towards electrification. We have an EV policy in Pakistan, which we have devised, and fortunately we've got a lot of public transport that has entered into the market. But at the same time, I think one of the colleagues in the morning said that, you know, EVs are quite expensive. They need to be, you know, affordable price ranges for cars and public transport. This is not, you know, we're living in a country which is not completely developed. You know, when we talk about Pakistan and their issues, we need to look at, you know, when we're talking about transboundary air pollution control, we need to look at the economic situation in these countries. We also need to look at the population trends, the land use trends, unfortunately, because there is poor land use planning, which has led to the consequences which have brought us today to talk about air pollution. Because of poor land use planning, we have sort of cut down our forest cover. About 11,000 hectares of trees are cut down every year in Pakistan. That's an estimated number, and I'm sure it's more. You know, so these are going to definitely exacerbate the emissions, because we are actually minimizing, reducing, and cutting our carbon sinks. We're already a water-stressed country. We don't even have clean air at the moment. We have cities which are heaps of dumps. You know, we just have garbage all around. You get out of this expo center and you take a left turn, and there'll be like little communities where the scavengers are collecting waste. They're actually burning that kind of plastic as well. Nobody is going there and checking if, you know, they give the relevant awareness to those scavenger communities and make them understand that, oh, these are dioxins, these are cancer-causing gases, and those are also going in the air, by the way. Not only, you know, at the cost of our health, but also, you know, you're polluting the surrounding areas. And this is not the situation only in India, it's in Bangladesh, it's in Pakistan. So these are some factors which are always ignored. You know, we can't really say that, okay, vehicular emission is the most critical one, fuel is the most critical one. Yes, they are. They're one of the biggest, you know, contributors to particulate matter. But at the same time, are we not using the land and the natural resources which are given to us in the very, you know, because we live on this earth for a specific time, you know, and when we plan, and a lot of colleagues have talked about action plans, roadmaps, you know. So roadmaps and action plans are made for future generations, looking at the given resources that we have. We don't have, you know, tangible outcome, you know, based planning in terms of air pollution specifically. When we talk about industries, I have, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So industries, of course, are dependent on energy, and most of their energy production is through coal, of course. Unfortunately, we lie in an economic zone where, you know, we don't have the access to clean and green energy or the low emission energy forms. So I would still again take it again to the transboundary, the Indo-Gangetic plain, because we share a common airshed. You know, there are about 5-7 countries which are lying in this zone, and we are always suffering not only one kind of pollution, but plenty. So as an environmentalist, when I look at the, you know, transboundary climate issues, there are plenty. Next, please. I think this was very important and interesting because, as I said, that the population is growing. So is the energy demand going to grow. In the last 2 decades, about 50% increase has been seen in the energy demand. And unfortunately, most of it, about 60% or more, is dependent on coal. Of course, then you're talking about higher emissions of nitrogen, carbon, and sulfur oxides. Then, unfortunately, there is lack of political will. In the judicial session, I was actually excited and I was very happy, and I would like to second Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, because I think there is poor governance, there's lack of infrastructure in order to curb air pollution. Just putting few sprinklers who are going around the city, are these just optics, or are we doing something on ground? Just putting few air quality monitors is not going to do the trick, unfortunately, and that too in Lahore and Multan, or maybe at some priority spots where we can have the, you know, photography. So that is not what we are asking for. We are asking for a plan that the government should step forward, build their own capacity first, because people who are actually working on ground, if you go and talk to those people who are actually, you know, driving those sprinklers around, they don't have any clue as to why they're doing that. Oh, we're trying to make sure that there's no dust. That's it. They have no idea that, you know, you are also a victim of air pollution. You know, go and check your, the lung function test actually tells you what is the capability of your breathing and your lung function. How well are you? So how many people and how many outdoor, we've got a lot of people who are working at 1122 and they're always on the roads. So, and unfortunately they're not in those filtered rooms, you know, the perfectly designed rooms which are there, you know, in the hospitals mostly, but not anywhere else, unfortunately. Not even the government offices have air that is clean. We have a stall outside by Royal Fans, and it has air purifiers. I think that is also one of the key elements. Why do we have to opt for air purifiers? I mean, 10 years back, we were not using any air purifiers. We had a lot of plantation. Now we're just, there's a lot of horizontal development of land. Next, please. Here, I would just like to highlight, because you can see that there are plenty of wonderful policies that exist in Pakistan. There are plenty of global policies, Paris Agreement, Gothenburg, you know, treaties, and ASEAN agreements. But the best one that I like personally, and I think that kind of a legally binding treaty needs to be put forward. We've got some colleagues from the UN. So, you know, I would urge that probably in the next COP, COP30, probably we should take this further, because this region demands serious attention. And I think we need to also set targets of controlling and reducing the air emissions. Next. Okay, so these are some of the platforms that are already available to the South Asian countries, and I think it's important that we utilize them. I think they're underutilized, and due to various challenges, because one of the challenges is the geopolitical challenge, because of our political tension, mistrust, investments into and the attention onto the military side between our neighbors is always existing, which is not and should be not the priority for these countries. I think climate change, there's no bigger emergency than climate emergency. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So this would be my last slide. And I think this is the most important slide, because I think here I would like to give some key concrete suggestions from WWF. We need to facilitate regional cooperation. The policies specifically for air pollution need to be made together for collective outcomes. We also need to ensure that there are regional dashboards for real-time data reporting on different kinds of emissions which pertain to air pollution. Sector-specific mitigation should also be taken into account, and that too at a regional level. It is not only Pakistan's or India's job. You know, the other partner countries need to take place as well, because all the countries that lie in the South Asian belt, they need to come forward and take action. And also, I think, as we said, the civil society also need to step up. There needs to be word of mouth, there needs to be awareness. ESG plays a very critical role. When we talk about private sector, I think it's important that we take industries into mainstream. We have to have blended finance, although that, you know, developing countries like ours, they heavily rely on grants. But I think blended finance mechanism for scalable projects should be identified and piloted in regions, but in a more holistic way where we can capture the major causes of air pollution. Another thing is cleaner fuels. I think we're still relying on Euro 2 and Euro 4. Somewhere in the world is at Euro 6. So we need to create that enabling environment to support the action plans that can actually address air pollution. Right now we're in the 5th season, smog. So there needs to be some sort of an agreement or a treaty which should address the smog issue particularly for like a temporary, solution. But on a longer term, I think it's important that we need to have a legally binding treaty where all the parties in the South Asian countries region can come together and take collective action and put it in their decision making in terms of finance, in terms of technical inputs, and also, plugging in technology. We're talking about monitoring of, air pollution. Why are we only monitoring it? Why are we not utilizing satellite-based data, GIS and remote sensing, and AI-based tool to actually, just like as China pointed out, why are we not utilizing it to address the issue, to resolve the issue, and to put an end to it? Because it's only going to be possible together. And on that note, I will end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nafisa, and thank you for concrete recommendations of what can be done. This morning, I had started my initial introduction about the relationship we have with air. It's one of those relationships where you can't walk away. It's non-negotiable, and I think we're realizing that more and more that relationship is being poisoned by what we put in the air. So it's really an important part of the discussion. And I think some of the issues that have come up here, the need for regional cooperation, is a recognition that Pakistan can't breathe alone. Without everybody breathing in the region, Pakistan will always be impacted. So I think this is why we've had this panel. But also I want to emphasize what Professor Gao said, the idea that industrialization or development and clean air and clean environment cannot go hand in hand is a false narrative. And I think what China has shown is a clear example that you can actually develop and have clean energy and use renewables and reduce pollutants in the air. What we've had from our brother from Sri Lanka is the risks that they face in a small island and the challenges they're facing and concrete cooperation that Sri Lanka needs, a recognition that Sri Lanka, again, cannot do it alone, and it needs a regional cooperation. Aban and Nafisa emphasized concrete ideas what can be done. And it seems to me, from listening to Aban, probably this region is the worst place to breathe in. If you look at the data from all the cities that are worst polluted in the region. I think we've had a wonderful team. There's one video to come, but I know Dr. Gao has to go to the airport. But if you don't mind, please, let's put our hand together for a wonderful panel that I'm delighted they were able. So, but I really hope with the leadership of Dawn, these concrete offers from Sri Lanka on a task force, the regional cooperation dimension that our force is something that we will be taking it together up front. At least from the UN side, we're committed to work with all of you to make sure this happens. We have a strong regional teams who can really take this forward. And we have some UN leaderships around here. Head of UNICEF is here with us, and the head of WHO is here, and other colleagues are also around. So with that, thank you. So I think we can move back here and then play the video.
The last video is from Shazia Rafi, the president and convener of the AirQualityAsia. Thank you very much again.
Honorable Ministers, Honorable Parliamentarians, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Salaam Alaikum and greetings on behalf of AirQualityAsia. Air pollution is a silent killer that continues to claim over 9 million lives annually around the world. Air pollution is also a measure of and an accelerator of climate change. The same carbon emissions that speed up global warming make air quality worse. AQI is like taking the temperature of the planet. All air pollution is also transboundary, as the air knows no borders. It is visible from space. Hazardous air pollution in one region is a circular multiplier leading to health impacts everywhere. I went to study in the US from a Lahore with pristine air and water, landing in New York City with air so polluted you could not breathe or see the tops of buildings. Today, the air pollution situation between my two cities has flipped. New York, due to implementation of the Clean Air Act, has daily healthy air readings. After I retired from my post as Secretary General of Parliamentarians for Global Action, we formed the Parliamentary Working Group on Clean Air, just as the UN was starting negotiations on the SDGs 2030. The right to clean air was proposed by us at the November 2013 IPU meeting by then Chairman Senate of Pakistan, Honorable Nayyar Bukhari. This was based on an analysis we had done with Honorable Justice Mansoor Ali Shah that this right was protected in the right to life in Pakistan's constitution. The resolution was passed with the support of Mexico, Brazil, Senegal, and Denmark. After a year's intense negotiations, 3 clean air targets were finally approved by the UN General Assembly September 2015, 3.9, 11.6, and 12.4. All member states, including Pakistan, signed the SDGs 2030 commitment. Pakistan also signed and ratified the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, committing to an overall cap on total carbon emissions. In November 2016, we set up AirQualityAsia, affiliated with the UN and the World Bank, to work with Asia's growing economies and their clean air transitions. The challenge for South Asian governments is enormous, as the Indo-Gangetic Plain is ground zero of air pollution at hazardous levels. A geological map shows the deep trough of this arable land hemmed in by high mountain ranges, creating a death trap of air pollution. Next slide. Of the world's 50 cities with the highest air pollution, 46 are in South Asia, 8 in Pakistan. Lahore often crowned as the most polluted city in the world. Regional cooperation in South Asia is ongoing. ICMOD in Nepal and SAQIP in Sri Lanka are working on air pollution regional frameworks. The UN system, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, air quality improvement projects are in their lending programs. Action, though, must be at the national level. According to Global Alliance on Health and Pollution, air pollution deaths have a bell curve. They rise as countries move from low income to lower middle and upper middle income and drop as they reach high income. Because our means of generating energy, transportation, means of production remain polluting, while higher income countries have access to technology solutions that are green and clean. That differential is changing rapidly as green technologies have become cheaper and more accessible. When we look at the sources of air pollution in Lahore and across South Asia's cities, the main pollutant is low-quality transport fuel. As one example from the Beijing EPD shows, this is a clear visual of the soot going into the lungs depending on which Euro-level fuel is currently allowed on our roads. Euro 6 or an EV would be an empty bottle. Pakistan, like many other countries in the ASEAN region, has started EV policies to join the global revolution towards zero-emission transport. EVs are projected now to take over the internal combustion engine by 2032, perhaps even 2030. To accelerate this momentum further, a phase-out enforcement framework must also be put in place for polluting fuels and vehicles. UK and California, for example, will reach the 100% phase-out by 2035. Changing the fuel is not the only solution. As we see from the results of China's comprehensive air pollution reduction plan, that has brought down air pollution in major cities by over 40% in 9 years. China met their target set in 2013-2014 of reducing private vehicles from a projected 400 million to be capped at a current 250 million. They built alternative public transport, thousands of kilometers of rail transit, inner city, intracity, across states. Enrique Peñalosa, former mayor of Bogota, always says, a developed country is where the rich take public transport. I live in New York City, where the mayor and the billionaires ride the subway along with the homeless. On the energy generation side, excluding hydro, 22.2% of Pakistan's energy mix now is renewable energy. Solar is now at 19.2%, up from 5.7% in 2023, a record-breaking growth. Pakistan's citizens have embraced the largest power generator that is in the sky. The struggle for both government and business sector is meeting this rising demand for solar panels, EV charging stations, and storage batteries. China has the highest number of installed storage battery gigawatt hours. This is the key technology partnership that Pakistan must execute and put to work the more than 40,000 engineers we are graduating annually. The key question remains who will bear the cost. The transition to successful green economy must begin by counting the economic cost of air pollution currently unaccounted in our GDP or by businesses in their cost accounting. According to the World Bank, Pakistan's cost of air pollution in 2016 was 5.8% of GDP. If we apply that same percentage to 2024 GDP, over 22 billion is leaking out of our economy in air pollution costs. Parliaments across the globe are also enacting green